When I was in Hamilton, just like all of you, there were certain students you knew connected to you. You go in the cafeteria, they came up and said hello to you, and walked through the halls, they went out of their way to talk to you. Quite obviously, I had that relationship with my football players. But in the 4 years I was in Hamilton, as time went on, I found out that I had a tremendous relationship with what the other teachers would call the bad kids. I'd go in the cafeteria, next thing I know, I'd have all these students stand around me, talk to me about the character programs and character things that we're doing, and they, quote, became my kids. And I love that. That's absolutely something I'm very proud of. But the point that I'm telling you that for is, those students that cause you the problems are dying for somebody to care about them. They're dying for somebody to ask them, why are you behaving that way? They're dying for someone to believe that that is their behavior that they're doing. That's not them. One of my coaching philosophies is this: criticize the behavior, never criticize the person. As simple as that. So their behavior is not acceptable, but you've always got to see value in the person. I'd like to relate to you 3 different stories that relate to the tough students, the students that are bad kids, changing their behavior. The first one, again, relates to Hamilton. When I first took the job at Hamilton, I said, we're going to do something that we did at Chaminade Julienne High School. A little bit different situations. At Chaminade Julienne High School, somebody was paying a hefty tuition bill and had tremendous interest in the student. So we had something called a mother-son dance, where all the football players brought their mom to a dance, and it was a great event. Well, I went to the Hamilton administration. I said, we're going to do this with the Big Blue. We're going to have a mother-son dance on a Friday night. The response was this: oh no, you don't understand. The football players on Friday night are wreaking havoc throughout the city of Hamilton. You'll never get them to come. That's not going to work. It's just not part of the culture. I said, no, kids are kids. They're going to happen. It's going to work. So the very first year that we had it, each of my assistant coaches, I gave them an assignment: get the player there with either their mom or the special female in their life, which many times was not their mom, but there was a grandmother or a neighbor, someone that was a special female in their life, and we're going to have this dance. Well, the coaches got on the phone and they were relentless. I would ask them, how many you got yes? They'd say, Coach, I got 6 out of 9. I said, get back on the phone. Find a grandmother, find somebody. Every one of our players is going to be there. We had it that night, and we had over 90% of the players come. And what we did is we played some music, and the players danced with their moms a little bit. And we had a dance contest and all that kind of stuff for the best mom and son dancing, this, that, and the other thing. The kids really got into it. But here was what was really neat and really touched me. We asked every player to stand up in front of the entire group and say 3 nice things about their mother. Well, they got up there and they stammered and stuttered and this, that, and the other thing, but you just saw mom crying. All of a sudden, your mom had never heard her son say that thing about him. Then we said, all right, mingle and go and introduce your mom to all your friends and say those 3 nice things about him. And I would stand there and look. I said, wait a minute. These are these bad kids that everybody said was going to be wrecking havoc and this would never work. We did it every year, and every year it was successful. Put kids in a situation to see their good side. Here's another story. When I was in high school, I went to a grade school that was football crazy. Out of 11 young men in my grade school class, 4 of us went on to play Division I football. Well, another one of my grade school friends played high school football, but he was really what we call from a really rough neighborhood, from the other end of the tracks. And his name was Howie, and I'm very proud of Howie. So all through high school, Howie was always getting in trouble. I can't tell you how many teachers called me aside. My parents never called me and told me that. But how many teachers said, you got to stop hanging around with Howie. And even when I went home, my parents would say, Howie's in a lot of trouble, but he's from the neighborhood and from the parish, and stick with him. He's your friend. Said, don't go with him when he does crazy things, because he's going to get you in a lot of trouble, but he's your friend, stick with him. So I went off to college. Came home Thanksgiving, no Howie. Really, no one talked about Howie. Christmas, didn't even think about that much. I was so busy doing this, that, and the other thing. So all of a sudden, it's the end of the year, and I come home. And I'm sitting in my living room, and I hear a knock on the door. My mom answers the door, and I hear a voice that's asking, that's Howie. And I hear these words: Mrs. Place, I'd like to apologize to you for all the trouble that I've caused you, for all the trouble that I've caused Jim, and I'd like to ask you for a second chance to be a friend of you and Jim. I came around the corner, and there was Howie standing in his dress blues. He was a United States Marine. All of a sudden, he was a different person. And what I found out was that he was so bad that the judge gave him two choices, the service or jail, and how he took to jail. Now, I'm not promoting the United States military. That's an individual choice that you want to make. But I will say this. The United States military takes any young man or young lady that walks in there, gives them a chance to become a different person, and does a tremendous job of behavior modification and turning them into productive, good people. The nice part of this story is how he went on to have a nice career. He had a nice family and led a nice life for a person that everybody said was not going to be successful. You know, one more example. We do something called Character Day, and that's a whole nother class. We do a class just on Character Day. But in Character Day, we do all kinds of activities where we ask the students to lower their water level. In other words, show us more of who you really are than what you would normally show in an everyday life. And the last activity at Character Day is where we get in something called families. And in families, the last question, we build up gradually the last question. The last question is, if you really knew me, you would know that. And then they tell something, okay? At the end of the day, we get together as a group and the adults go down and they circle students that they say, these students have issues and they really would benefit if we can provide it with some extra services, from some extra attention. I've done over 150 Character Days. So think how many students that is. I've done it in every environment that you can possibly imagine. Affluent districts, inner city districts, prisons, rural districts, everything that you can possibly imagine. And I'm going to tell you this, that in every one of those, when the student answers, if you really knew me, you would know that 4 out of 10 or 5 out of 10 or sometimes 6 out of 10 students tell stories where you look at them and you go, how do you get out of bed every morning? How do you come to school every morning? You're dealing with those issues. You also know that the other students in the group are looking at them and go, you come to school, you're always happy, you're always popular, you've got nice clothes. No one would ever guess that about you. But yet so many students are struggling. So many students have issues. So many students are dying for someone to say, well, what are those issues? Now, how does that relate to the classroom teacher? Of course they're causing you problems. Of course they're not motivated. Of course they're disrespectful. It's not you. It's not the school. They're bringing that baggage into the front door with them every single day. It's no wonder that they don't explode more often and get into more trouble. Learn the student, learn their story, you'll win the student, and you can motivate them and you can work with them, just as simple as that. Now that leads me into this. You know, over my 50 years as an educator, I got a chance to sit down and talk with students a lot of times, and a lot of times those students were in trouble. And that gave me the opportunity to talk to them and say this. You know, they would start telling me their story. And they would go on, and I go, now stop. Those are the facts. You know, you just told me what happened. Now, as I told you earlier, the thing that I like to ask them is, what's up? You know, and then I ask them this question, do you like being in trouble? I've never had a student in all those years say, yeah, it's really fun. It's so much fun. You know, the teacher just yelled at me. The assistant principal is going to yell at me. You're probably going to yell at me. My parents, it's so much fun. Or there's another group. You know, you look at, there's a group that's always in drama. It's the same kids every year. They're always in drama, and I love to ask them, you like being in the drama? And they always tell me the same thing. I hate it. Coach, can you do anything to help me find a way to get out of the drama? Well, you know, then I follow with those 2 words that I told you earlier are the most important words that any educator can ever say to a student. Well, then tell me what's up. I know what you did, but tell me why you're acting that way. Or as my daughter Carolyn Heller says, tell me what's stopping you from behaving in the way that you want to behave as opposed to behaving in the way that you do. You know, there's a philosophy that I believe in, and that philosophy goes like this. I want to read it to make sure I get it right. Treat a student as who he is or she is, and they will remain that same person. Treat a student as the person he can or should be, and he will be that person. You know, I think that how you treat a student goes a long way, and believe me, they know. They can sense, the students feel just how you're going to treat them. If you see they walk in your class and they feel like, oh, that teacher thinks I'm a bad kid, they're going to act like a bad kid. If they feel like that teacher brings the best out of me, they're going to respond to that. I continually have talked about those master teachers. I think that's probably the most important ingredient that the master teacher has, is they have the ability to look at students and not see their faults, but see what their potential is. And that's what that's saying to that. I'd like to tell you a story about a young man that I coached in Hamilton, and he knows that I talk about him. His name is Donovan. When Donovan was a sophomore, he's a very big kid, probably 6'2" and 300 pounds even as a sophomore. He was a terrible student. Barely got eligible. I don't know how we got the 5 Ds to get him eligible, but that happened. He was a terrible person. He was in trouble. He was suspended all the time, just as simple as that. He was a terrible athlete. Never came to workouts, really didn't work hard. If we would go to conditioning and say start running laps, he couldn't run one lap around the track. He would stop and give up on himself. Well, one day we were in a drill, and we called the drill hamburger. Hamburger is a very simple drill. It's just a one-on-one drill that linemen do. You're either going to win in hamburger or you're going to lose. One player is going to dominate the other one. Well, I had 2 really good Division I football players that were linemen on that football team, and both good kids. Well, one day in hamburger, I put the very first few days we did hamburger, I put Donovan against one of these division linemen, and he destroyed him. Boom! He got inside control, he drove him back, and he beat him. Donovan's a sophomore, the other player's a senior. I said, let me see that again. I said, get in there. I put the other Division I lineman in there. Boom! He destroyed him. He did it over and over again. I took him aside and I said, Donovan, what's that about, man? You've never shown that before. I said this to him. I said, Donovan, if you would remotely get your act together, you can be a Division I athlete. Now, I'll do everything I can to help you reach that goal if you'll do your part. Fast forward 2 years later, he has now signed a Division I full football scholarship. He has worked hard in the classroom, never a great student, but good enough. But he worked hard. He became a good person, and he became a very good football player. So we're at signing day, and we're sitting at a table with Jay Morrison, who is the reporter from the local newspaper. His mom is there. His younger brother was a great athlete, Devin Jarrett, is sitting there with him. And the reporter asked him a question. He said, Donovan, what inspires you to be a Division I athlete, to reach this success? And he says, it was the day that Coach Place told me that I could. And I said, what? I never knew that, Donovan. He says, Coach, don't you remember that day? I says, well, I guess now that you mention it, I did. He says, Coach, you got to understand something. He says, before them, he said, I live in the 2nd Ward. The drug dealers in the 2nd Ward saw me as a 6'2", 300-pound guy, and they targeted me to be a collector, an enforcer. He said, everything I did up to that point in my life was to prepare me for that career. I was mean. I was nasty. I didn't care if people liked me. I had no reason to have academic success. That wasn't going to correlate to what I needed to do to be a collector. Coach, the day you told me I could be and saw in me a Division I athlete, I changed who I am. Now, that's a very drastic story, but you know what? And those are the ones you talk about for years and years and years. But couldn't you have that kind of effect on a student? By just seeing him as somebody that you believe could be successful, as opposed to seeing him as the, quote, bad kid. The bad students are the ones that are dying for character education. The tougher the student, the more they buy into it. Over my years as an educator, I've had the opportunity to talk to service groups, especially the year we won the state championship. I spoke to just about every service group in the Dayton area. They're always looking for a speaker. What I do is I go in and I talk about the character card, which I'm going to tell you about a little bit later. And it's got a little 10 or 12 minute, 15-minute presentation. Then I open it up to questions. Well, service groups are tremendous people, and I hope that they stay around. They're getting a little older, and sometimes young people aren't joining them, but they do so much for communities, and I really hope that they can survive. Well, a lot of times when I've spoken to service groups, some person will put their hand up, and they'll ask me this question. Are young people today as good as they were in my generation? And then you'll hear them talk about the standard old walking 2 miles in the snow to get to school and having their knuckles wrapped by a ruler and all that kind of stuff. Well, first of all, I'm from the older generation also. I never walked 2 miles to school in the snow or anything like that. So sometimes our memories are a little faded as to what it was really like during our time and what kids today are like. But here's the answer that I give them when they ask that question, and it comes up all the time. I say, make this statement. The young people today are part of the greatest generation that's ever existed. They're better than the past, the generation before them, and they're better than our generation. But I want to add something to that. I want to put an asterisk behind that. Okay? And here's what the asterisk is. The young people today are part of the greatest generations ever existed. And maybe I should leave out the World War II group because that generation, they were the greatest generation. But anyway, the greatest generation that's ever existed. And what's the asterisk? If they buy what you're selling. In other words, the young people today, every generation becomes more of a why generation. If you can explain to them, this is why you should do something, they'll run through walls for you. They'll do anything for you. If you don't explain it to them, the exact opposite is true. They will go to great extents not to achieve for you. You know, if you apply that to athletic teams, you know, you look around and it's the same teams that are good every year. They have great records. And the same teams every year have poor records. Now, sometimes there's outside factors that affect that. There are just certain things built into certain communities or certain schools that are going to promote good athletic teams. But in a general sense, you can look at schools with very similar backgrounds, and one achieves and one doesn't. Well, it's real simple. That coach at the successful team has got the players to buy into what he's selling. This is our program. I want you to believe in it. The program at the failing school is the exact opposite. The players haven't bought into it. They don't believe in it. They don't give their whole passion. Let's go to the classroom. Same thing with the classroom teacher. That master teacher, the students have bought into what they're selling. Whatever they've done, consciously or subconsciously, it's working. How about those failing teachers? Remember that statistic we gave about how many got out of the profession? And Jim Place believes that there's a whole lot to do with the failure to connect to the students, to connect to why they got in the profession in the first place. They haven't found that formula to connect to the students. It's a why generation. I think it was greatly influenced, especially for my period, by two things that happened way back in the 60s and early 70s, and one was the Vietnam War. And believe me, I'm not political, but it was the first time in our country where our country started to ask, well, why is the government doing that? And the other thing was the great movement of Dr. King. In other words, the races were always segregated, and all of a sudden Dr. King asked the question, why? Why are we doing this? It's just not right. Every generation has carried on that why to another level. You know, look at today's young people. Look at 8th graders. They're taking algebra in grade school. They're taking Spanish and French in grade school. They're learning at levels that you can't believe 30 or 40 years ago. Look at seniors in high school taking AP calculus, taking college classes while they're still in high school. This is a great generation if they buy into what you're selling. Just as simple as that. You know, in athletics, we never ask young people to do it. It's almost impossible for a person to play 2 sports today, and very challenging 3 sports without a question. Whereas I remember when I played high school football, the season ended in November or October, and the coach said, well, I'll see you August 15th, have a good year, and work out on your own. We're making it, young athletes today, or athletes today, they work out year round. They commit to their sport year round. I'm not sure that's good, but it's a fact. And they're more dedicated and more passionate. This is the generation that people are criticizing and saying, this is not a good generation. This is a great generation. I think you need to see that in students. But I think also that you have to understand something. Students come in your classroom, you've got to sell your program. You got to spend some time explaining to them, this is why you're in my classroom. This is what a good attitude is. Now, when I get the character card, which is coming up in a little bit, and I have a reason for holding it to one of the last things, I'm going to tell you my system for explaining why. And you cannot spend too much time on it. Here's something I believe with my whole heart. If you know the why, the how will happen. In other words, if people buy into what you're selling, if they understand why they're doing it, the how will happen. So if your students understand why they're in your class, they will learn. If the 2 players on my team understand why they're on the team, they will perform at their highest possible level, and we'll win as many games as our physical talent allows us to win. You'll have as many students pass the standardized testing as possibly can do it if they understand why. You know, 2 activities that I'd like to do with you that deal with the why. Here's the first one. I want you to imagine something. You're looking out the window. I've got a window right here. And you see out in the parking lot a massive man. He's 6'8". He's 310 pounds. He's one of the meanest men you've ever seen in your life. He's got a shaved head. He's got great big hooped earrings. He's got piercings all over. He's got tattoos. He's got on one of those strapped shirts that shows off his muscles, and he's crying. He's just out of his mind. And he's looking at his car, and someone put a dent in his car about there, a little scratch, not a dent, even a little scratch. And the guy's crazy, and he's screaming at the building. The next person that walks out this door, I am going to physically beat into the ground. As simple as that. Now, you didn't put that scratch in his car. You don't know that man. Are you going to go out that door? I certainly hope not. You have no motivation to go out that door. You have no why. Why should I go out that door? You know what's funny is I tell that story to my team every year. And of course, these are strong young men. I'll go out the door. I said, no, just roll with me and assume that you wouldn't go out that door to fight that gentleman because of something you have no reason to. You have no why to do it. Now let me change the situation. Same guy, massive earrings, strap shirt, tattoo, the whole deal, you got him. And he has a member of your family, especially let's say your sister or your mom, and he is hitting her. He is just a horrible person. Would you go out that door and at least jump on his back? Would you go out that door and somehow stop him? Of course you would. You know, what's the difference in the two? In one, you did not have a why. In the other one, you had a tremendous why motivating you to go out that door and affect that man. Here's another one. So on the same lines of understanding why. I want you to do something. I want you to write down on your sheet of paper, on your worksheet, answer to this question. If you had 4 things that are important in your life, so let's reword it this way. There's an all-powerful being that can take everything away from you. That all-powerful being can take away your body, your thoughts, your memories, your mind. But he said to you, that the all-powerful being, he or she said to you, all right, you can keep 4 things though. What are the 4 things that you would keep? All right, on your worksheet, there's a spot for that. Please write those down. Okay, welcome back. What'd you write down? Did any of you write down your house, your car, your honors, any of those other things that we talked about before when we talked about your legacy? I doubt it. I want to tell you what my 4 are and see whether they correlate to something that go along with your 4. All right. First of all, quite obviously, my family and my friends. I'd like to keep my family and my friends as part of my life. Number 2, my positive attitude towards life. You know what? I don't know if I could go through life being a negative person. I just consider my positive attitude towards life as one of my greatest blessings. As simple as that. Number 3, as I go through there, is my good health. You know, when everything's going good, you appreciate it. You don't appreciate it. You don't realize how much it is. And number 4, my memories. You know, I've had such a good life. Of course, I'm older. And as you get older, you tend to look back rather than looking forward. There's not that much left to look forward to in the future. You look back. Those are my 4 things. How many of you put something similar to that? Well, let's carry it to another level. Are those the things that you're motivated to achieve at? Are those the things that you'll put tremendous time and tremendous passion into? As simple as that, okay? Or are those other things that you don't? Do you put it in the other things? If that's the case, then you got to change the way you live your life. You got to change what's important to you. So how does that relate to you and a classroom teacher and for me as a coach? Well, you've got to make your classroom as important as you possibly can. Not one of those 4 things, but you got to get it up there. You got to make it something that's very important to them, something that they'll commit passion to. You know what's amazing is I do this exercise with my football team. How many of them put being part of the football team? At that time in their lives, at that moment, that is one of the 4 most important things in their lives. And so I challenge them, if that is the case, then use it to make you a better man and use it to commit to do the good things in life. Okay, whole new train of thought. I'm going to give you a talk that I give to my players every year. A lot of times when I speak to different groups, I give this talk. And the topic of the talk is this: 3 things that I believe about attitude. And they're things I truly believe. Point number 1 is this: attitude is the most fair thing in your life. Life itself is not fair. Let me give you some examples. There was a country in Africa that I read about where 10,000 babies a week were dying of malnutrition. How is that fair? Think of our school or your school. Go to the school cafeteria. How much food gets thrown away at any school? I don't care what school, gets thrown away at the end of every day. And all of a sudden, we think about 10,000 babies in Africa every week dying because of malnutrition. How can you say that's fair? Life isn't fair. Next thing, you can just think of your own school. Go down the hall where the multi-handicapped students have, where they were born with tremendous physical handicaps, okay? Then go up to the main hall and see some young man or some young lady that has it all. Great parents, very attractive, good students, good athletes, very popular, possibly in the play, part of the band. They've got it all going for them. How's that possible just within your own school? You know, another area where life is not fair, you have no control over the parents. You have no control over what home you were born into, what neighborhood your parents live in, what schools your parents send you to because of the neighborhood you live in. That's not fair, and I know that. And it's something that is a part of life. If you really and truly have this belief that life has to be fair to everyone, you got a lot of problems in your life. You know, something that happens is I have the opportunity to sit down with numerous students and we talk about the obstacles in their lives. And so many students have tremendous obstacles in their lives to overcome compared to so many students that are born with basically that silver spoon in their mouth. Everything that you need to be successful in life, they attain simply because of where they were born and who they are. As simple as that. And what I tell these students that have these obstacles to overcome is we start out with this statement. Life's not fair. I realize all the obstacles that you have, and they're not your fault. But, and here we go, point number 2, you have more control over your attitude than you have over anything else in your life. You have more ability to change in the area of attitude than you have to change your physical structure, than you have to change your mental capabilities. You have more control to change anything in your attitude than anything else in your life. You know, an activity that I do with my players is I say this. How many of you would like to be 6'11" and have an excellent chance of going to the NBA? Put your hands up. Put your hands down. 6'11" people were born 6'11". They have a tremendous physical advantage when you're talking about going to the NBA. I asked them again, how many of you would like to be a 4.35 in the 40? Put your hands up, put them down. For the most part, 4.35s are born with the ability to train and become a 4.35. How many of you hope to get a 1600 on your SAT? Same thing. A whole lot of the people that got 1600s on their SATs were born with tremendous intelligence. Now, you have a lot that you can do with your physical talents, with your mental talents. But a whole lot of where you get is based upon the God-given talents that you start with. That's just a fact of life. The opposite is true with attitude. You have control over your attitude. You have more control over it than anything else in your life. You know, I ask my players to take the mirror test every morning. What's the mirror test? Get up every single morning, look in the mirror, and say, I'm going to have a great attitude today. I'm going to be the best person. I'm going to be the best student, and I'm going to be the best athlete that I can possibly be today. And I am going to be one of those people. If I go to coaches and Coach Place and say, Coach, do I have a good attitude? Coach Place is going to say, you have a great attitude. And it's something that you have control over, but you've got to challenge yourself every day to keep that attitude. Now, something about that and rolling into the fact that you have control over your attitude, you're going to fail. You're going to fail to have a good attitude. You're going to fail more than any other area of your life. That's just the way life is. Think of that student. He's all fired up, he or she. They do the mirror test. They're coming down the steps. They're going to go to school. They're going to have a great day at school. They walk down the steps to see their parents, and their parents go, you're going to school looking like that? You look terrible. I can't. Whoop, there went that good attitude. Just that fast, it gets wiped out. How about they go to school and there's some person that's a good friend of theirs, or even a teacher that they have tremendous respect for, they walk by them and that other person doesn't say hello to them. Boom, there goes that good attitude. Let me just go off on a tangent a little bit about saying hello to people. Psychologists have done studies and said that there's a tremendous positive response with just the very simple thing of saying hello. Tremendous endorphins are released. Tremendous happiness is produced in people by just that one thing. The exact opposite occurs when people don't say anything. They have negative effect on people. You can magnify that many, many times if you say their name. Hi, Tom. Hi, Mary. Hi, whatever the person's name is. Tremendous increase in the positive effect. Don't ever forget the effect that teachers can have with just a little thing like saying hello to your students in the halls, or as much as you possibly can do that. It has a tremendous effect upon students. So students are going to fail. So here's the next thing that I tell students when they fail in the area of attitude is ask for help. There's nothing that I value more than when a young man or young lady will come to me and say, Coach Place, I'm trying to have a good attitude, and I'm doing the best I can, but I get knocked down every day. I get defeated every day. I believe in the mirror test. I'm buying in, Coach, but it's not working. You know what? That's the young man I want to work with. That's the young lady I want to work with. That's the young man or young lady who's going to be successful in life. They've got the key to it. They know that to have a good attitude, you got to recommit yourself every single day. I hope that I was and that you will be the person that students will come to and have that talk with. I want to have a good attitude. Will you help me? When you're having problems with a student, one of the things I love to do is ask them this: do you have a good attitude? What's your attitude like? Every student says, yeah, I got a great attitude. You're the problem, not me. Or this is the problem, not the problem. And you got to point to them. A little bit is you got to look at your own attitude. Now, before you go into that, also clarify this. If you really want to have a good attitude, please let me help you. Please let me be there to guide you, to give you suggestions. And if nothing else, just let me be there to know that I care that you have a good attitude, because you're going to need support as you go through that. Continuing on those same lines of thought, attitude is flexible. Attitude is not set in stone. It's not a firm thing. You look at any individual, from year to year, they have different attitudes. Think about a student that when they were a freshman, they were a great person. And everybody thought the world of them. And then when they're a senior, you go, what happened to them? They're in trouble and have fallen off. Hopefully think of the other situation. When they were freshmen, they were just terrible. They just got in all kinds of trouble. And then a senior functioning, maybe even a leader, a success. Young people change. The period that we have them from K through 12, they're going to change more than any other period of their life. What a great opportunity, since students are going to change, to help them develop the the attitude that they need to change during that time period. What a great opportunity to work with them on that. I want to share with something I do in my kickoff meeting. The kickoff meeting happens the first meeting that we have with the team, obviously, and it's in late May. And one of the activities, I give out an information sheet that they fill out, and then I start with this activity. And I want you to do the same thing, I want you to hold your hands like this. And I want you to imagine in your hands that you have a book. All right? Everybody turn to page 1 in the book. There's nothing there. Page 2 in the book. There's nothing there. Page 3 in the book. It's blank. You get the idea. It is a blank book. I tell my players, that's you. You are coming into the program with an absolutely blank book. Now, from this very minute on, you're going to start writing in your book. I don't care about anything in your past. I don't care if you had all F's or all A's last year. I don't care if you were the star of the team last year or you weren't even on the team last year. I don't care if your dad is the president of the school board or if your dad's in jail. And I certainly don't care what your older brothers and older sisters do or have done. I care about you and what you're going to do. I don't care about your past. That's gone. Everything that's going to happen in this program is about your future. Now start writing. Now let me give you an example. We gave you a handout. All right? You turned in the information sheet. You keep the sheet that tells you all the information that we want. In most meetings, some students will leave that behind. If you leave your sheet behind, right away you've told us, this isn't important to me, or I'm not a responsible person. We're going to start conditioning next week. If you show up and come to conditioning, you're writing in your book, I am dedicated. I am willing to do what's necessary to be successful. If for reasons beyond your control, you don't come, you just don't show up, you're writing in your book. It's not important to me. I'm not a person you can count on. I'm not a person you should target to be a key member of this team. Just as simple as that, okay? But you have that blank book and the chance to do that. I think every teacher should start every class that they teach with that activity. Do you know how many students are dying for someone to say that to them? Not only dying to say that to them, but to see them in that light. How many students have caused issues and problems because they walk in expecting to be the same old person, to be viewed in the same way as we talked about later? Can you think about the relationship that you've established with those students in the first 10 minutes of your class that can last the entire year if you've established the fact, this is the way the teacher sees me. This is the way this teacher is going to treat me in their class. I think it's an activity that every teacher should do in doing that. You know, and talking about attitude being something that's flexible, if you have the attitude, well, I've heard about the students coming into me this year, and I just like this was an A student and a B student and a C student, I'm going to rank them by attitude and their character and how much trouble they got into. So 10 are the great kids. They're really good. You know, 1 are the, oh man, they're terrible. They're horrible kids. So then they come in your door. 7, 6, 4, 2, 3, 10. Oh, my 10. 1. Oh, no. How many, be honest with you, have said this? I've got him in my class. I got her in my class. Oh, no, I can't. Or you got about 6 of them, the thems in your class? As opposed to this, every one of them walks into your class at 10. Every one of them walks in your class with that blank book. What they're going to perform in your class is totally up to you. You have control over their attitude. They have control over their attitude. You have to convince them that in your class, that they have control over their attitude, and you're going to work with them and do everything possible to help them develop a good as attitude as possible. All right, let's go to number 3. Attitude is contagious. And I'm going to talk about attitude being contagious in 2 ways. The first thing, and I truly believe this, is attitude is contagious within the individual. So let's just apply it as a football coach, then I'll try to relate to it as a classroom teacher. I believe this. Basically, I have that young man from 3 to 6 every day during football season, and then 3 days a week in the off season. Now, what effect am I going to have upon that young man? If I can have a tremendous positive effect, that where he views himself in a positive manner, he has a great attitude, he's responsible, he comes to practice on time, he works hard, he develops a tremendous work ethic, he feels like he's part of a group, he feels like he can be a success, he does the things necessary to become a success, he develops a great attitude. I believe he believes that's who I can be. I will believe then that the other 21 hours, that we can have a huge effect upon that person. Attitude is contagious. If we can get them to have a great attitude in one area, there's no reason that it can't spread to the other areas, that they can believe, I can be a good student. I can be a good person. I can be a success. It's contagious within the person. Now, one thing about it is, let's go back and talk about win little battles. You know, for some of those students, they are going to totally buy in. From 3 to 6, we can get them to buy in so much that that's going to be who they become the rest of their lives. So if you have a team, and 7 or 8 of those players, which is not the whole team, that's why I say that's a little battle. You're winning 10% of the team. What a great victory. What a great victory. That attitude is contagious to them in the rest of their lives. Okay? How about every other player, though, you had some effect? So you know what? They're going to work hard the rest of their lives, or they're going to be respectful, or they're going to be on time, or just anything at all. They're just going to view themselves in a little better point of view. That's a little victory. Same thing with your classroom. You know, who are those students you can have that huge effect upon? Let's say you're a science teacher, and one of your students goes on to become a doctor. And you know, what they learned in my class had an influence on them becoming a successful doctor. What a great, great victory for you. All your students, you know what? I hope that what they learned in my English class is going to help them in everything they do the rest of their lives. As simple as that. And some of them are going to use it as a career. Some of them may even become English teachers or science teachers, that you've affected them so strongly. Just as simple as that. You know, attitude is contagious. If it's in one part of a person's life, it can spread to others. Now, here's the next thing along the lines of attitude is contagious. It's contagious within a group. And that goes back to that 10-80-10 rule. If you can get a group of your players to have a good attitude, it spreads to the others. Just as simple as that. Good attitude is contagious. You can just see it on a team. You see it when they can walk out on the practice field. You just get the sense, these guys got a great attitude. You can see it when they walk in your classroom. They got a great attitude. It just spreads. They feed off of each other. You had one particular team that when they came off the bus, we had a bus over to practice at a different facility from the school. They came off the bus every day just joking with each other and sometimes arguing with each other, but it was a loving argument with each other. And you just felt the effect of all of them lifting each other up. That group of students went on to success beyond anything you could ever believe, and the attitude was contagious within the group. 3 things. Attitude is the fairest thing in the world. You have control over your attitude more than anything else in your life, and attitude is contagious. Okay, whole new train of thought. On your worksheet, I want you to answer these questions, and you'll see it on your worksheet. What is good? Write your definition of what is good. What is bad? Write your definition of what is bad. And thirdly, is capital punishment good or bad? Okay, welcome back. You know, I don't know what you wrote there. I would guess this, each of you wrote something different. Now, in my face-to-face classes, I then put all the students in a group and I say, okay, you have to come up with a consensus. Everyone has to agree that your group is going to present an answer for what is good, what is bad, and is capital punishment good or bad. I give them time to discuss it. I give them 5 or 10 minutes, not a lot of time, because I'm not looking for an answer for them. Sometimes, and very often, groups can come up with, well, here's what we've sort of agreed as consensus is good. Here's what we sort of agreed as consensus is what's bad. We had some give and take, and some people wanted this, some people give and take. But I'm very shocked if they can come up with a consensus where everyone in the group says, yes, capital punishment is good, or everyone in the group says, yes, capital punishment is bad. And I can take any popular issue that could be discussed. And here we have a group of educators, all in the same profession, that very, very seldom can come up with a consensus. And if they do come up with a consensus, then something happened to put just a unique blend of people in that group. Now, why did I do that exercise? I do that exercise to show this, and it's a very important point. We all have a different line for what we think is good and bad.